Hello again, and congratulations on making it to lesson 4. Today's lesson is about credit, goals, and debt. We will be covering what it takes to build a good credit score, what the difference between good and bad debt is, and what steps you should take to get out of debt if you were to ever find yourself in that situation. Let's kick off this lesson with a very amusing video clip.
Talent can only take you so far. The people who really make it are people who work hard. And if you really put your mind to something, you'll be amazed at what you can achieve. I've always been interested in discovering truth, telling people's stories, and influencing change. Journalism is the first draft of history.
I want to be an influential figure in changing finance for the better. And I want to contribute back to society by establishing a not-for-profit organization for children in Ukraine and counseling services in schools.
I have wanted to make movies since I was 7.
If I do my job today, it means I moved a step forward in trying to get something made that will eventually be projected and eventually seen and maybe even beloved by someone. I want to be audacious with my cinema. I want to reach a lot of people.
I have all these things I want to do. I have these places I want to see, these things I want to report on. And right now I can't do those things because I don't have someone backing me. I don't have capital. I don't have the opportunity to do what I want to do.
I want to prove to the world that I can do this, and I know that I'm going to need help. It's not just financially. I think everybody needs people who believe in them.
Every director in history, they all at one point had someone reach their hand out to them.
We need each other.
Who knows what I can do as I keep moving forward in my career. If I had someone behind me, I would be unstoppable.
To know that there are people out there.
Have you ever had that experience before? Where you got paid on Friday and then the next thing you know, you have like $12 to last 2 weeks? Let's be honest, I know I've been there before, especially when I was in high school. We just don't want this behavior to spill over into adult life. Many, if not most, Americans are in debt. The U.S. household consumer has an average student loan debt of $30,000, a mortgage debt of $155,000, and a credit card debt of $16,000. In total, Americans are over $900 billion in credit card debt and have over $1 trillion worth of student loan debt. Student loan debt has increased by almost 6% from 2014 to 2015, and between 2005 and 2012, the number of students going into debt has increased by 66%. And the average student loan balance has increased by almost 50%. This means that more people are going to school, but also that the cost of attending college rises every year as well. Between 1995 and 2015, tuition at national public universities grew by 296%. More and more people are going to school even though the tuition rates continue to rise. This is because they understand how, despite the previously mentioned numbers, the increase in your education translates to an increase in future earned income. These statistics from the 2014 Bureau of Labor Statistics show that the higher your level of education, the higher your chances are that you'll earn more money each year and the less likely you'll be unemployed. Let's jump into a discussion on credit now. It can be difficult to explain, but credit is basically this: the ability to obtain an item before making a purchase based on the trust that you will provide a repayment at a later date. Do you have a friend where if you were to loan them $20, you know they would pay you back? That friend has good credit with you. Stay friends with them. Now, do you know of somebody that if you were to loan them $20, that would be the last time you saw that money? Does that person have good credit with you? No. This leads us to the 3 C's of credit. Creditors prefer to loan money to borrowers that have certain traits because they know that they are more likely to repay them. The first C is character. This is specific to your reputation as a borrower. Are you a person of your word? Do you do what you say you're going to do, and more specifically, do you pay people back when they loan you something? Lenders care about this because they want to ensure that the people they are loaning money to will pay them that money back. The second C of credit is capital. This refers to how much money you have in the bank. Therefore, creditors know that you're able to use that money as collateral to pay back your loan. The third and final C is capacity. This refers to having a job and a monthly income. If you are capable of making the monthly installment payments to service your debt, if you're already in debt and are barely able to keep up with the payments, then does it make sense to go further into debt? No. In Lesson 2, we discussed the 3 credit bureaus. Do you remember what they are? We'll review just in case. They are Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. These agencies track the bill-paying habits of consumers. That information is then used to determine your credit score. Have you ever heard of FICO before? Your FICO score is another word to describe a credit score. In the 1970s, Fair Isaacs Corporation created a software that pulls information from these 3 credit bureaus, hence the name FICO. So, what's a good credit score? Well, a credit score above 750 is excellent. Anything below a 600 is poor, and anything in between is considered fair. Having a good credit score shows that you are a responsible borrower, and it gives you leverage to negotiate the terms of a loan, such as securing a lower interest rate, which will help you cry less over time. Now, your credit score is like your grown-up report card. So, how do you get the best grade possible? 1, payment history. This means paying debt on time every month. Number 2 is how much you owe in relation to how much you originally borrowed. If you're making more than the minimum payment due each month, you will pay off your debts faster and be charged less interest over time. Number 3 is how long you've been in debt. If you have a history of paying back loans quickly, it will show creditors that you have a strong capacity to pay. And 4 is being careful with new lines of credit. Each time you apply for a new line of credit, it knocks down your credit score a few points. Lines of credit are agreements made between a financial institution and a customer that authorizes a maximum loan balance that the bank will permit a borrower to carry. You can establish lines of credit at banks and various retail shopping outlets. Now, if you're already in debt and you open yourself to more possibilities of debt, how do you think creditors would view this? Credit is understood to be a good thing, but once you purchase something using credit, it becomes debt, which is considered bad. I know, weird. There's a fine line between credit and debt. As soon as we use credit, it becomes debt. So honestly, we could think of credit cards as basically a debt card. Do you think you'll be able to avoid debt? Unfortunately, the odds are against you. 8 in 10 Americans are in debt. That's why we're here to help you, so that you can understand how to manage debt you may obtain. On that note, let's jump back into types of credit. Credit is categorized into 2 types, fixed credit and revolving credit. Fixed credit is closed-end, meaning that it has a set payoff date. Revolving credit is open-ended and has no set payoff date. Examples of fixed credit are automobile loans, mortgage loans, and student loans. Examples of revolving credit are credit cards and lines of credit. So when you take out a loan using fixed credit, you will know exactly how many months it's going to take for you to completely pay off the loan. Whereas in an open-ended loan, you can use the line of credit up to its limit, pay it off, and then immediately use it again the next month. You can do this again and again indefinitely, and that, folks, is why it's called revolving. When borrowing, the original amount of money lent is called the principal. The interest is paid on that original amount of money. Interest is generally expressed as a percentage of the principal. Now, before we move on, what do you think? Is this company pure of intention and just being nice by lending you money? Or are they a business looking to do business? That's correct. They are indeed a business and they are in it to make a profit. So how do you calculate interest? Here's the formula. Maybe you've seen this formula before in one of your math classes? Let's go over it. Remember that interest is equal to the principal, or original amount lent, times the interest rate, which is often expressed using a percentage, multiplied by the time that the credit is being used. Have you ever seen this acronym before? Yes, more acronyms. APR stands for annual percentage rate and is an interest rate that represents the annual cost for using credit. If you wanted to figure out what your monthly interest rate was, you would divide the APR by 12. And if you wanted to calculate your daily interest rate, you would divide it by 365. There are 3 methods of calculating credit card interest: previous balance method, adjusted balance method, and the average daily balance method. They each utilize the simple interest formula. We're going to take a look at these 3 methods individually. So let's say you have a credit card with an 18% annual percentage rate. Imagine that it's winter towards the end of the year and you receive a statement on December 1st with the following information. In November, you had a previous balance owed of $600, but you made a payment on November 15th of $400. And on that same day, you also made an additional purchase for $100. And there are 30 days in the billing cycle. I know it's a lot to think about. We're now going to see the simple interest formula being applied so you can understand it a little better. Using the previous balance method, you would end up having an interest payment of $8.88. Your $400 payment on November 15th is ignored in calculating the interest owed. Now, using the adjusted balance method, you would only pay an interest charge of $2.96, and this is because they took into account the payment you made on November 15th. Just a warning, this method is barely used by creditors, even though it's the best method for consumers. And finally, we have the average daily balance method. The average daily balance method will involve changes that were made to your account throughout the duration of the month. For example, during the first 15 days, your account had an average balance of $600. And for the last 15 days, there was an average balance of $300. Therefore, you would have an interest payment of $6.66 due. The only way to have a no interest grace period is to pay the outstanding balance in full each month. Note that not all credit cards are created equal. They each offer different rewards, values, and services. You may get approached from various credit card companies, and I want to encourage you to not blindly sign up for the first offer that you receive. They'll try to appeal to you and your emotions. You should compare cards and determine which one has the best offer for you. So, as an example of this, we're going to take a look at these 2 cards and how they compare. Both cards offer 1% cash back, but only the Discover card offers 2% cash back on purchases over $1,000 and additional Amazon perks. Is cashback really that great though? We'll investigate after we finish comparing these cards. We can see that both cards offer no annual fee and they both do not charge foreign transaction fees. Only one of the cards does not have a late fee on the first late payment. This is important to consider because the credit card company can automatically raise your APR over 20% by default. If you make a late payment, only one card offers a free FICO score, 24/7 customer service, and is widely accepted. Both cards offer $0 fraud liability guarantee. Which is sounding better to you? Now we're going to take a look at how that 1% cashback program works. Let's say that an individual spent $13,425 over the course of a year on various expenses. How much would that individual get in cashback rewards? $135. Major ripoff alert, guys. Beyond that, you would be paying more for those small want items than the original cost because of the interest. Now, rewards could become beneficial if you could manage the money and pay off the balance in full each month. Also, if you owned a business and had to travel often, you could earn points to earn cash back when dining out and reward miles when purchasing tickets for air travel. Now, let's go over some simple tips together. Before purchasing something using credit, remember to ask yourself, what is the APR? Can I afford the monthly payment? And is this purchase I'm about to make a good debt or a bad debt? But wait. I thought we just said debt was all bad. Well, debt will always be debt, but some is good or better than others. What qualifies a good debt is two things: being able to manage the monthly payments, and if said debt brings you a profitable return on your investment. Here's another thing to ask yourself. Is this purchase I'm about to make a need or a want? You really shouldn't make purchases for wants using a credit card. You should save your money and make those purchases instead with cash. Purchases that you make using a credit card should only be for emergencies or purchases that will help you build your credit score because you know you will be able to manage the payments. But what if you needed a computer for work or school and didn't have the money? Do you think that would be a good debt? This type of debt would be an investment in yourself and would likely bring you a positive return on your investment, and therefore could be considered a good debt. Now, I want you to take a second to think about your goals. Do you have a desire to own your own home one day or your own car? Many people share these goals of owning their own home, vehicle, and obtaining a college education. Now, do you have the money set aside to pay for these things? Most of us don't. These are big purchases, and that's why many people finance these investments through debt. While it's very commonplace to use debt to achieve our goals, we also have to be careful not to put ourselves in a situation where debt prevents us from achieving other long-term goals. It's all a balancing act. Let's keep moving forward in this lesson now. Who remembers where you can access over $150 billion each year in federal aid? Heck yeah, FAFSA. Also remember that you have various options in paying for college, such as grants, scholarships, and loans. Do you remember what we discussed about student loans? That they have an average payback period and the differences between subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Should you consider federal student loans before private student loans? Yes, because of the lower interest rates and deferment options. Many recent graduates are burdened by their debt load. If you do decide to take on student loan debt, it's important to consider your future career opportunities and the average annual salary of positions in that career field. Now we're going to switch gears here and talk about cars. Do you know the difference between leasing and financing? When you lease a vehicle, you pay each month to rent it but never own it. When you finance a vehicle, you take a loan out and eventually end up owning that vehicle by paying off the loan over time. Here's a loan application for a car. They are going to want to know your financial situation. They want to determine that you will be able to manage the monthly payments. You can see a side-by-side comparison of financing versus leasing a vehicle. If you decide to lease this vehicle, there will be a limit on the number of miles that you can drive it each year. And at the end of the 3 years, you would have to turn in the keys. If you finance the vehicle, there would be no limit to the number of miles you will be driving it each year. And you'd have to take a loan out for that vehicle. You can see that the amount that you would pay each month would be higher if you were to finance the vehicle, but you would end up owning the car after making payments for 5 years. With this in mind, we're going to take a minute to discuss how you avoid bad debt. An asset is something of value that we may purchase using credit. If we purchase an item and that item is a depreciating asset, that means that it loses value over time. If we purchase depreciating assets using credit and we are not able to manage the payments, then that debt becomes a bad debt. Can you think of an example of an asset that loses value over time? A car and technology are perfect examples of depreciating assets. As soon as you drive a car off the lot, it loses value. And as technology advances over time, previous versions become obsolete. If you take on too much debt, then those monthly payments will become harder to manage. Things add up quick. If you're paying yourself first by saving 10% of your income, and if you're spending 20% of your monthly income to service debt, that means you'll only have 70% of your money left to spend on all of your needs and wants. When you make a purchase using credit, be sure to take your time in making the decision. Don't make feel-good, in-the-moment impulse purchases. It's okay to say no. Sometimes we get sold on the idea or appearance of how something made us feel. Still, we should think things through before we purchase. It's okay to think twice, 3 times, or even give it a few days before making our final decisions. We should ask ourselves, is this a need or a want? This is why budgeting is so important, because when we budget, we are taking our time to plan how we're going to spend our money. As a first-time buyer, you should consider used car options and purchasing from a private seller instead of taking out a loan to finance a vehicle. So we've talked about student loans and about purchasing a vehicle. Let's now take a moment to discuss what it takes for the big ones: renting an apartment and obtaining a house. The first thing you must consider is that there will be a rental application, and you must be approved before you move on to anything else. This is what an application will look like. The application will ask you questions about your finances to determine if you are able to afford the apartment. If you have the 3 C's of credit, character, capital, and capacity to pay, it will ask you questions such as, what is your occupation, your monthly salary, and what are your monthly expenses, such as, do you have debt payments that you are making each month? Once you are approved, the lease agreement will cover the terms of how much you will pay per month and how much the security deposit will be. The security deposit will need to be paid before you move in. If you damage the property in your apartment, then your security deposit will be used to cover those damages. The lease agreement will also outline if you are allowed to have pets, how long you can have visitors stay, and how many copies of keys can be made. Now, let's talk about when you're ready to purchase a home one day. You will most likely be taking out a mortgage. A mortgage is a loan for a home in which the bank lends you money so that you can cover the cost of making the purchase for a home. Let's take a look at an example. Let's say your dream home sells for $500,000 and you've been a diligent saver. So you've managed to save $125,000. You still need $375,000 to cover the cost. Therefore, you apply for a fancy mortgage, get approved by the bank, and voila, you're able to buy that home. Now, the title of the home is owned by the bank and is used as collateral, meaning that the bank owns the legal rights to the property. The bank technically owns the home until you pay the principal of the loan back to the bank, plus any interest. Fun fact, that is why in French, mortgage means dead pledge, because you first agree to pay back the loan, and that commitment dies once you've honored it by paying back everything that you owe. A mortgage is a fixed form of credit, and the payback period is either 15 or 30 years. The interest rate will either be fixed or adjustable. A fixed interest rate stays the same throughout the term of the loan, and an adjustable interest rate fluctuates each year, depending on market conditions. Here's more mortgage moxie. A balloon payment is a type of mortgage in which you only pay the interest during the terms of the loan, and at the end of the term of the loan, a balloon payment of the principal will be expected. You typically want to avoid balloon payments. To amortize a loan means to completely pay off the principal plus any interest. This means that you've paid off the home and are now the rightful owner. Now we're going to shift gears here and discuss a concept we hinted at earlier. It's called debt-to-income ratio. It compares how much of your monthly income is spent on servicing your debt. Let's consider an example. John has debt payments that add up to $2,000 each month. If he was earning $6,000 per month, then 33% of his income would be going towards paying off debt each and every month. That only leaves him with 67% of his money left to spend on other needs and wants. Now, we've been talking about ways that people obtain ownership of assets such as a house or a home by receiving a loan and then paying that loan off. Rent to own is another method that people obtain equity, though it's important to note that when people do this, they can end up paying much more money in the long run. We're going to look at an example. The most popular rent-to-own items are furniture, appliances, and electronics. You are also able to rent-to-own tires and rims. Let's say you wanted these rims. If you were to buy them from this website, they would cost about $1,200 for the whole set. Now, if you were to go to Rent-A-Wheel, you could rent-to-own them by paying for them on a weekly basis, $85 per week, over the course of a year. Might sound sweet, but if you did the math, that's $4,420. That's $3,200 more than the initial rims were worth. It's better to budget and save up for items that we want, because we will end up paying more if we rent to own. Speaking of budgeting, sometimes when people don't budget their money correctly, or if they're just not earning enough income, they may resort to payday loans out of necessity so they can pay their bills, not get the electricity shut off, etc. Unfortunately, the interest rates on payday loans tend to be very high, and in the state of Nevada, for example, they can rise as high as 500% legally. Let's take a look at an example of this. Let's say you borrowed $500 on December 10th at a 25% interest rate. And 2 weeks later on Christmas Eve, $625 is due. So you ended up paying $125 to use $500. People who use payday loans can get stuck in a cycle of taking out loans each month. To prevent yourself from getting into this type of situation, budget your income correctly each month to meet your needs and your wants. Payday loan and check cashing centers are often referred to as predatory lending centers because they prey on people who are down on their luck and those whom are desperate for cash. This is usually why these people are willing to accept the scary interest rates. In another situation, what if you were earning equity on an asset but paying it off, such as a house or a home, and that asset was worth less than the amount that you owe? That asset would be considered underwater or upside down. Market conditions, which are out of our control, can create this scenario. You have rights as a consumer. There are laws created that protect you as a consumer. These laws are enforced by the Federal Trade Commission and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. These acts were created to ensure that you may dispute errors in your credit report and ensure that creditors are not permitted to harass you to obtain repayment. Also, your employer must get your written permission to use your credit report, and they must also tell you how they plan to use it. Who's heard of bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is a method to have your debts forgiven, but it also has negative effects such as detrimentally affecting your credit score and future ability to use credit in general. It can drop your credit score by over 100 points and will remain on your credit record for up to 10 years. You do not want to end up here. This is why we are teaching you these concepts now. We want to prevent you from ever having to file for bankruptcy. Debt consolidation is another form of managing debt. It is a form of debt refinancing in which you use one loan to pay off many others. You would be able to secure a lower overall interest rate to the entire debt, and you have the convenience of servicing only one loan. But you would likely end up paying more over time because the term of the loan is extended. If you can't afford it, you cannot afford to spend it. Let's check out this clip to see exactly what that means. That's my favorite book! You don't need a copy though, it's pretty self-explanatory. Don't buy things you can't pay for. If you were to ever find yourself in a hole of debt, there are certain steps you would need to take to get out of it. Number 1 is to create an emergency fund so that you don't have to go further into debt by handling unplanned things that may pop up. You can also pay off debt using a snowball method, where you target the smallest debt and build momentum from there. Basically, you list out your debts from smallest to largest. and make the minimum payments on all payments except for the smallest amount. The smallest debt category is where you make a larger than the minimum payment. Once the debt is paid off, you roll over the total amount you were spending on the first debt and you add that to the second largest debt until you pay it off, and so on and so forth until all the debts are paid. This allows you to build momentum so that you end up building larger payments towards the biggest debts as you take care of the smaller debts first. Step 3. Once you have your debts paid off, you want to have 6 to 12 months of expenses in savings so that you can protect yourself against the loss of income. If you were ever to lose your job due to uncontrollable circumstances, this would give you enough time to get a new job and stay on your feet during that transition period. The last step is to put 15% into retirement accounts to save for your future financial independence. By taking these steps, you will ultimately be more in control of your financial destiny and be more prepared toward living a financially stable life. I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. Exhausted, but enlightened. That was a lot of good information. Please let your teacher know if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone.